Welcome to Marketing Rebels Breaking Business Barriers. You've joined us for a special series today called Marketing Momentum for Mental Health. And we have Sheryl Plouffe here today. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Sheryl, welcome to the show.
Hey, Shauna, thank you so much for having me. My name is Sheryl. I am the co-founder of Icon Maker Joint Venture and the creator of the Seven Figure Podcaster Program. I'm a former TV broadcaster in Canada, having done over 20,000 hours of live TV broadcasting in my career. And the reason that mental health is an important topic for me to want to share some of my story today is that my family's been touched by mental health concerns, right? And whose hasn't? I guess is really the point. We all collectively have had people in our lives who are close to us who have struggled with mental health, and so that's why it's important to me. Certainly, have had my own bouts of moments in my life where things haven't gone so smoothly, and I think that's a common experience, Shauna.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most important things that we can take out of just that realization is the fact that it can literally happen to anyone at any time, these experiences of extreme emotional distress.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can think of quite a few of them, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship. But even in my professional career as a broadcaster, there were some really tense moments, and I think a lot of those things probably led me to entrepreneurship. I wasn't able to necessarily, and I don't think any of us can really ever get rid of the stress or the pressures, if you will, of life altogether. It's just more about how are you managing the stresses of life that are there, regardless.
That makes a huge difference too, right? Like, I mean, if you're going into a situation where it's going to be stressful, if you're going in there and expecting the worst and ready to just react to everything, then you're probably going to wind up stumbling quite a bit along the way. But if you go into it going, yeah, it might get messy, and I've got this,
Yeah.
it
I
makes a
think,
huge difference.
yeah, personal development has been key for me. I think once I started to commit to doing personal development, whether that's audiobooks, reading books, listening to back in the day CDs. Back in the day, I'm dating myself, right? But like it's the personal development is what opened my eyes to the fact that there was another way, that there was a different way than what you've just described, which is this like sort of combative, the world is against me, negative kind of flow of life. It's like, why is everything happening in this way? Why is the world against me? And I think we've all had bouts of that. But once you can move into a place where you start to understand yourself better, right? Self-awareness and personal development, that's what for me really changed the game in terms of how I think about myself in the world.
Now, self-awareness and personal development can lead to a lot of interesting little rabbit holes as you're going through these things, and it unearths parts of you that you sometimes aren't prepared to deal with. And it also kind of gives you permission to process things in different ways. So I'm going to ask you, and I really know where this will go, if I'm being honest. And this is just kind of
Neither
broad.
do I.
When
We'll find out.
I'm looking for a time in your life when that was your reality, when it's like, yes, I've done some work on myself. Yes, I know I have capacity. Um, and I've been given myself permission to process the way I need to, but it still was hard and it still felt like work. Can you think of a time when that was your reality?
I think for me, 2013 was a pivotal year in a lot of different ways. So I was working at the Weather Network at the time, full time as a broadcaster, and at that point in 2013, I was managing the news department. So it was a big job, and I'd been doing that for about 3 years at that point. Well, it turns out that the leadership team at the Weather Network decided that they wanted to go in a different direction with the whole department. And so they said, you know what, we're going to eliminate this position because we're kind of taking the company in a different way. So I had been really committed myself so much to that job, right? It was like literally, it's news, right? It's 24/7. And so, and I had a team of 17 people across Canada that I was managing, bureaus, photographers, reporters, camera, also
Mhm.
a network of user-generated content providers across Canada, freelancers, and a big, multi-million dollar budget, like all these different things. It's a big, big job. And so what struck me at first was, well, then who's going to pick up who's going to pick up all this work that I'm doing was the first
Mhm.
thought that I had. But secondly, I started to realize, oh, wait a minute, like this whole industry is going in a totally different direction. And maybe that wasn't entirely surprising because of social media, because of digital. And there were even moments in meetings that we had, all employee meetings, where they would say, we're investing in digital. Yeah, the TV division, not so much.
Mm.
So it was like all the people in the TV department are looking at each other going, should we all move over to digital?
Right.
Right. So, and so that was a really difficult time, in 2013 for me to be told, hey, we're going to eliminate this position. And then I went back to what I was doing before, which was broadcasting.
Right.
And so it was also at a time where I was personally going through, a weight loss journey of my own. So I had like all my personal kind of health things because my health had declined in the 3 years that I was doing that high pressure job.
That makes
Like it
sense.
was super stressful. I
Yeah.
remember, Shauna, I'll just tell you a quick side story. I remember at one point on the side, I think it was I don't know, where is your spleen? Is it the right or the left?
That's a question for my husband who does
Okay.
biomed and
Let's
stuff,
ask
not
your
me.
husband. Wherever the spleen is, because I remember later learning, I think, learning that it was because of the spleen. I had this sort of like a rash, kind of open wound kind of thing
Oh.
develop on the side of my body. And I didn't know what it was. I ended up going to a naturopathic doctor and trying to figure out what it was. Well, it turns out that it was the result of all the stress that had been built up in my body was physically manifesting itself and coming out of my body.
Man, oh man.
Okay. So there was a lot of stress with that job. And so when it was taken away, that was the first thing that I thought was, who's going to pick up the pieces of all that? you know?
Right.
So I had been up to that point, and probably for the previous, I would say 4 months, 3 or 4 months, I had lost, I think, 15 pounds. I was really working hard on myself because of the stress I was having in that position. I would fly off the handle. So if my son, who was young at the time, would just say, "Mommy, can I, do it?" I'd be like, "Wah!" And I would yell and scream at him. And in retrospect, now it just brings tears to my eyes. Like I can't even believe I was that person. And I would fly off the handle and scream and yell, which is completely out of character for me. So obviously the stress was having ramifications inside of me that I wasn't even realizing. So I thought, well, start working out, and I did lose some weight and all that. So 2013 really was pivotal in the sense that that job stopped. I went back to my old position. The problem was that I knew then, Shauna, that I was no longer on a path toward growing and in that company.
Yeah.
Like it had been cut off. And that was my plan. My plan was like, because I loved it there. It was great. The people were awesome. I loved it. I was on a path of growing in the company and, had my sights set on what would be the next level and what would be the next level in the corporate structure. And I was really good at my job. It wasn't that I wasn't good at what I did. It was that the company decided that this division, they didn't really kind of want to pursue it anymore
Mhm.
in that same capacity. So 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 there I am going, oh, okay, well, that's been cut off. And that's when I started thinking about, is this a sign that I should be taking what I'm doing or what I've done and these experiences that I've had and go toward building something of my own?
Mhm.
Now, that process took 4 years. It took
The
4
process
years
of realizing or the process of actioning?
actioning.
Actioning it,
It
yeah.
was 2013 was the moment where I was like, "Oh, maybe something sparked inside of me," where I started to think, "Maybe I should start something of my own." Had no idea how to do it, knew nothing about it. The only thing I was doing at that time was personal development. I was traveling and commuting 2 hours a day minimum to and from this job. I had a lot of time in the car. So I was listening to audiobooks and I was listening to CDs and trying to take myself out of the cyclical listening to the dreadful news radio cycle 24/7 of negativity, turned the radio off and turned on audiobooks and positivity and CDs. And so I was doing personal development. So part of it was that I could see a path for that it was possible. I just had
Right.
no idea how to do it. It took 4 years of me working and figuring out, and I'll get more into that story, but it took 4 years for me to finally be in a place where I felt like I could start my own video marketing company.
Yeah. And there were so many things that had to happen in
Yes.
order to get there. Like I'm seeing it, your body responded physically to your declining mental health, emotionally, relationally. And then the universe said, hey, guess what? Nah, you're done. This thing that you thought was good for you, it's not working for you anymore, Sheryl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
so
was
you had to make that shift. You were
I
forced
I
by
I just, when I look back on it now, when you're living in it, you don't really kind of realize. It's not until after that you look back on that person and say to yourself, "Wow, that was totally out of character for me." In the moment, you're just living in the moment. And I'm flying off the handle and losing my cool and yelling at my son for I remember one time it was like something about brushing his teeth and I just lost it. It's like,
I
"What?"
I think every single parent listening can relate to some level because
Yeah.
it seems basic, and we know that it's simple. It's just brushing your teeth, but it's brushing your teeth. It's simple. Let's just do
Yeah.
it. You get caught up. So
Yeah.
it's totally relatable and natural to get into that space, but I think that level of awareness you were able to get by reflecting on your ridiculously long commutes gave you the insight to slowly but surely, maybe not consciously at the time, like you say, you're reflecting, but subconsciously start to make the changes and realizations you needed in order to take action, in order
Yeah.
to change.
Yeah. And what I started to do was I thought, well, how will I learn? I need to learn more about entrepreneurship in order for me to feel like I could go in that direction. And it was challenging. I remember at one point I started a blog and I wanted to start a blog. I didn't really know about what. I think it was about video marketing, if memory serves me. And I was experimenting and I was like, how do you create a website? Like I was that person, right? Going on all the YouTube channels and buying all the courses and all the things to try to figure out like what's a website. And so I started with WordPress and then plugins and I learned this and I learned that and I started a blog. Well, I got hauled into the office because I was a TV broadcaster who should not be moonlighting, quote unquote, moonlighting,
Hmm.
doing other things like that, quote unquote, building a brand of my own. That's not part of the equation. You're building the brand for the company you work for and only for the company you work for. To the
Ah,
point, I remember I had a Facebook, my Facebook page got renamed by someone at the company to their brand without my permission. Yeah.
oh my goodness. How that alone takes a huge hit on your mental health because you're not even allowed to be you anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I
That's
never thought of it
just
that way.
that's intense. I mean, I'm somebody who stands very tall in my authentic power and says, "Hey, this is the way it ought to be," and I encourage everybody else to. So the idea of somebody, I'm actually getting riled up here. The idea of somebody telling you, "No, you're not allowed to be you. You're not allowed to express yourself because you work for us, and I'm going to show you my hand, and I'm putting my
Yeah,
thumb
but
down."
I never looked. I mean, I didn't really. Anyone who's in broadcasting knows that that's part of the equation.
Part of
Like
it.
you do sign employment, it's not contracts, but agreements and
Yeah.
letters and things like that. That really you can't. For example, you're not really allowed to change your likeness in a drastic way without their permission. So, for example, I wouldn't technically be allowed to go platinum blonde with short pixie cut
Right.
from one day to the next without
I
their
think.
permission, right? Things like that. But that comes with the territory. And so, but what I didn't love was the fact that I was now being told and controlled in something that I wanted to do personally,
Right.
right? And so it was a compounding effect over those 4 years of realizing like if I stay in this position, I'm going to be stifled creatively. I'm not going to be able to do things that I want to do that light me up. And so I was becoming more bitter, more angry, more upset over the course of time in realizing that I felt stuck.
Right.
And so, yes, that I think compounds the whole feeling of feeling trapped and feeling like you don't have options. And so, and again, over that course of that 4 years, I took almost all of my vacation time and used it to go to conferences, to seminars. I spent my personal money to go learn about entrepreneurship and online and marketing. And I was learning about all these different things. I would take time away from my family to go and sacrifice that so that I could learn what I needed to learn to get to where I wanted to go, which, became more and more clear to me over the course of that time. From that watershed moment, it became more and more clear that this was the path I had to go on. Also, the fact that I believe God was speaking through me and saying, like, you are going on this path. Like, this is what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
So I just pursued it. I remember one time I went to a conference in San Diego. I was there with my sister was there and two of my friends. And so that was the four of us. We were sort of like the four musketeers, right?
Nice.
And it was a beautiful event. Like we were there for probably 3 or 4 days. It was a 3-day event. Learned a lot, great speakers, so inspirational. Of course, the organizer of the event makes an offer at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I desperately wanted to do this program. I was like, this program is what I need, but it was $12,000.
Right. Right.
And I didn't I never spent more than, I think at that point I had spent $2,000 on Marie Forleo's B School at that point.
All right.
And
So 12,000 sounds like a whole heck of a lot.
yeah, 12,000 was a whole nother echelon of investment in Sheryl, who wasn't already building a business.
Right.
I was working, and so I was having a meltdown. I was having, and my sister and the girls would be telling you, yes, she did. She had a meltdown because I didn't have the money, like, to be able to pay for it outright. But I was like, do I have credit cards? Do I have a way I can do this? How can I do this? I know this is what I need to do. I need to find a way to do it. And I'm freaking out. I'm in the bathroom. I'm crying and they're trying to console me. And I'm walking up and down the outside with the palm trees in the sun going, I got to do this. And so I ended up doing it. And I found a way. I think I put it on credit cards. I don't even really remember what I did to make it
Mhm.
happen, but that was an important pivotal moment for me, because not only did I learn a ton of things in that program, which was awesome, but it set me on a path of understanding what it's like for the recipient to receive an offer from the stage like that, because I ended up becoming her.
Right.
I ended up becoming her. And since then, I have sold hundreds of thousands of dollars in programs, myself and with my partners too, right? And so I became her eventually.
Yeah. And that, I guess that experience, if we want to broaden this to allow all of our viewers, our listeners to take note, is that every experience that you're having right now as you grow your business, as you live your life, and as those two things impact one another, it's going to, if you let it, positively influence the way you run your business when you are successful, when you get to the point where you've only been dreaming of yet.
Mhm.
And you can make sure that everyone else's experiences are a little bit less dramatic. You can't completely take it out. You can't.
I think it's
But you
always
can at least have
dramatic to some
sympathy.
degree. The first time you do anything, it's scary. It
Mhm.
is really, really scary. But what I think I did in that moment was I tapped into my belief in myself. I tapped into my own belief in myself. And my partner, Tom, so eloquently says, don't let the lack of cash flow today stop you from the cash flow that you want in the future, right?
Right.
And that's really, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was part of the conversation that was going on in my head. I'm like, okay, I know this is my circumstance right now, but I can't let that circumstance dictate what I know to be true about myself and my belief in my ability to do this. Therefore, I must find a way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think it has to do with self-awareness. It does have to do with digging deep and listening to your internal voice, because there will always be external factors that, quote unquote, are telling you you can't do it. And so what you have to do is you have to rise above that and say, okay, do I believe in myself? Is this something I want to do? Therefore, I'll find a way. I guess I could give you an example too. When I was commuting back and forth to the Weather Network, 2 hours in the good weather, as a Canadian girl, you know what I'm talking about, on
Oh
the
yeah.
401. When in the summertime, when the weather was fine, it would be an hour each way. But in the winter, right, that commute could sometimes be 3 hours long, depending on what the situation was. So
Absolutely. And that was before they renovated the highway there.
that was back in the day before
That's
they widened it. I mean, it was terrible.
yeah. I mean,
And
not that it's not
so
still, but
I would do what I had to do.
yeah.
I would pull over to the side of the road and conduct, calls with people on my phone. Back then, flip phone, I think it was, even
Yeah,
like
probably.
on the
Nokia.
phone. Yeah, and I'd be sitting I'd pull over at Campbellville, there's a gas station there, and I'd sit in the little parking area, and I'd be on a call, and then I'd drive the rest of the drive, and then I stop at Aberfoyle, do another call. And
Mhm.
if you know the geography, I'm basically going at like 20 kilometers, stop, do another call,
That's exactly it.
and doing what I had to do to make it all come to life.
Right.
It's sacrifice, I guess to some degree. But when you have a belief in yourself and you know that you're on the right path, you find a way and you get very resourceful.
I love I love this concept, and I love the idea when you believe in yourself, you do what you need to do to get there. Um, and you said something about, rising above it. And I've got a few conflicting things going on in my brain for this. And that is, number one, what does it take to rise above? Because it's all fine and dandy to just say, and you rise above. That's like saying, and
Yeah.
you pull the rabbit from the hat. That's great. We don't know how to do that necessarily. But
Mhm.
then there's also the conversation. So, I mean, we can tackle both of them at once or one after the other. But there's also the conversation that needs to be had between pursuing your dreams and actually living your life now, and not getting caught up in the hustle culture that can degrade your mental health, can lead to burnout, especially if you already have layers of mental and emotional struggle that you're dealing with, on a personal level.
Mhm.
So let's walk through that.
Okay, well, I mean, you're right. The rising above, it's easy enough to say, right? Those are just words, pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Rise above. What does it really mean? Well, I mean, I think it is about taking one step at a time and not having to feel like you have to do everything all at once. A lot of people want sort of the business in a box, if you will, or the
Yeah.
solution in a box. And they want like it all kind of delivered to them on a nice platter. It usually doesn't work out that way. It's usually one step at a time, one imperfect step at a time that leads to the next opportunity, to the next thing, to the next thing. So the rising above, I think, is that. I think it's just understanding that it isn't going to be smooth, easy necessarily, but that if you just take one step at a time, you eventually end up rising above whatever circumstance that you're in. And it can take time. It can take a little bit of time or a lot of time,
And it's
depending
just
on
that idea of focusing on the little wins. Every little win, every baby step is a step forward, and being okay with that and accepting that, and
even the bad ones, even the ones that you deem to be negative. It's like, oh, I took this step and it didn't work out. Now, in that moment, you feel like it didn't work out, but you come to discover later, oh, there was a lesson in there. I see now that that experience, while difficult to go through at the time, has helped me understand some concept better, or recognize and be grateful for a situation in the future that I could not have seen then.
right.
Right. And so I think but which also I think ties into the next part that you asked, which is, it's great to have dreams, but you also have to live your life now, right? As you take those steps, and when you have, let's say, positive things that happen, celebrate them. Find little ways to celebrate. They don't have to be expensive ways, but find ways to celebrate,
I
right?
know
Celebrate those accomplishments.
I had another friend of mine say to me, very knowledgeable person who I respect and admire. They said, so many people will get caught up in this idea of like, I want to travel, or I want to experience adventure, but I don't have the money, and I don't have, and I don't have, and I don't have. And they get really caught up in that cycle. And then they just sit on their couch. And this person just advised me, said, hey, look, you want to travel? and all you've got is enough money for a tank of gas. You can't stay overnight anywhere, whatever. Okay, fine, no problem. For this person, she said, take a left right adventure. I said, what the hell is that? She says, drive and just choose left. Okay, right. Okay, left. And just go and see where it takes you. And of course, time it so you can get back home in time, but see where it takes you, because you could find yourself at one of the most magical places close to you that you never even knew existed. And you are there experiencing life as you dreamed of right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, another example of that might be, and I'm thinking about Kitchener, for example, where so I used to live in Kitchener, and you're close to there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a market called the Christkindl Market,
Yes,
and
it's
it's
beautiful.
beautiful. It's the Christmas market. It's beautifully done, and when you're there, you do feel like you're in a German town, like you're in like what you could just as well be in Germany at a Christmas market. And so I think if you think about your environment, your city, or where you live, there are often events or things that are going on maybe within your region that could be the place or the destination of travel without having to go to Italy, or you're not going to these expensive places. But it could be something like that, like thinking about what are some things that I could do to reward myself in a smaller way, or maybe less expensive way, if that's what's holding you back in the moment, so that you can still experience the gift of giving back to yourself and rewarding yourself, and still get that feeling of what it's like to reward yourself, because that's really what it is. You have to you have to behave like you're already at the place you intend to be. You have to act like, think like, behave like where you're going, not where you're at circumstantially.
And that actually leads me to something else that was popping up for me, and that is the cognitive dissonance that occurs when you're in that space, when your mind is torn between two concepts, between two levels of thinking, feeling, and being. How do you navigate that? Because we know, okay, I know to achieve success, I need to think, be, act like that person. I also know that I am this person. And
Yeah.
that can be so challenging. How do we navigate that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's easy, right? But I think it's a choice. It's, do I choose to still be limited by my circumstance, if that's what you feel is holding you back? Like, that's your choice, to think about being limited by the circumstances of the moment. That is your choice, and it's like, I'm not saying that's not reality, right? It's
Mhm.
like there's bills to pay, there's things to do, I get that. I totally get that. But thinking bigger than your circumstances is a choice. When I think back on when I was 15, was really another like pivotal age for me, because I came from circumstances that were not maybe the most ideal. Let's just say my mom and dad split up when I was young. Thankfully, they did get back together a decade later and have been together ever since. But during the
That
decade,
alone, though, is conflicting. So, circumstances, I
yeah,
got it.
10 years that they were apart was challenging. My mom, 4 kids, social assistants, right? Dad not in the picture. I saw my dad, I think, once for 1 week in that whole 10-year period that he came to visit us, right? So, and we have a great relationship now, but but at the time in that 10-year
Challenging.
period, it was difficult. And so, when I was 15, those were the circumstances. That was the reality of where we were at. But in my mind, I was somebody totally different. In my mind, I made choices to do things that were at the time really, really scary. So, for example, I was invited by a school friend of mine's mother was
Mhm.
doing a fashion show, or organizing a fashion show. So she
Okay.
had approached her daughter and had said, do you have any friends who could model in this fashion show? And so she approached me and asked me. And I was like, what am I gonna do? A model in a fashion show? That seems crazy. Like, why? I'm the girl from the wrong side of the tracks. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
But internally, I was like, but I want to do it. I want to try it. So I did it. And it was really, really, and it was scary. My heart was beating out of my chest. I felt like I was like on fire. I was so nervous, and I ended up doing it. And I was like, okay, All right, good girl. Yay, you did something scary. Well, that led to me getting kind of like almost addicted to this idea of doing things that scared me so that I could get that
Right.
feeling of what it was like to accomplish and overcome and rise above the circumstances. So then I got into pageants and I started winning them. I did a singing competition. I won it. I did a pageant. I won, right? Like, and it's not really about winning. It's more about accomplishment and being able to rise above a circumstance that, for all intents and purposes, would have not really led me to that path. I
Yeah.
ended up hosting a news magazine TV program when I was 18 years old, right? Which set me on the path toward television. Those things, every single one of those things was terrifying. I did a TV commercial when I was around, I think 18 or so. I did a TV commercial for an audio video company.
Mhm.
I didn't know what I didn't know what I was doing. Are you kidding me? I was modeling. I was on the front page of the Weekender newspaper flyers, and in the all the things. I was at one point. I'm hobnobbing and I'm cutting ribbons with the mayor of the city. I'm in the
And who knew?
parade.
Right.
What?
All because you made, like, really, I mean, and it's funny because just because you said yes once, and
Yes.
I know we can say you need to say yes all over and over and over again, but a lot of times we get stuck in that first yes. And it's like, you just need to say yes once. Try it. See what happens.
Mhm.
And then we go back to what you were saying before, and it's like, do the next thing. And then the next thing. You just need to say once.
Yeah.
My trainer does this to me all the time. Just one more, just one more. And I've done 3. Just one more. Are you kidding me? Just one more. You just said one more 3 times.
Well,
But that's how you get stronger. That's how you move on. That's how you rise above. Just one more.
and then to give you a juxtaposition of that
Mhm.
situation, I could be in the parade in front of hundreds or maybe thousands of people lining the streets with the mayor and waving and crown and sash in one moment. And then I could go home and we have to open the door to the oven to heat our house.
Right.
Right. Like that could happen in one day back at that point in my life. So you're living two different lives, really.
Hmm.
But it was this idea that I could become somebody different. I remember one thing I did, Shauna, was I would write down affirmations. I didn't know they were affirmations when I was 15, but I would take little pieces of white paper and take scotch tape and I would write things down that I wanted to do or become. And I
Right.
would paste them to the wall of my bedroom. So when I was doing the pageant, for example, I would write down, I am Miss Nanaimo. I am da 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 da. I am, and I would write these things down and put them on the walls and read them every day. I didn't know until many, many years later when I started doing personal development. Oh, I see. There's actually a reason why,
So that's
that
what that
works.
was.
Mhm. That's what that was in
Yeah.
hindsight.
And see, one of the things that I like to say is it's a quote that I made up, but it makes a huge difference when you start thinking about life in this way. And that is, always leave the door to possibility open because you never know when opportunity might walk in. And I think that that's kind of where we're coming from.
Mhm.
If you say no, if you close the door, if you stay stuck in your cage, you're not going to be able to see the sunrise, the proverbial sunrise. That's
Yeah,
pretty huge. Now, that said, I
absolutely.
want to ask you if there's any final words, any big notions that you just have bottled up inside of you that needs to burst out. This is the chance to say it.
I think if you think about, if we get existential here and we start talking about like, why are we here? What is the purpose of all it? Why are we even on this planet? Why are we doing this? Like, I believe we're here to create. And you can interpret create in any way you like. That could be create a product, create a business, create content, create a family, right? Whatever that is, I think that's what it's all about is if you can get into the mindset and take action toward creation in no matter what definition that is for you, you're going to be on a path of growth because the process of creation is what makes you grow as a human being. And it can also give you purpose. And I think that's the tie in here that I would say fits in with the mental health conversation, right? It's like You have purpose when you are creating something and you're putting your creative energy into it. So I think that if I had to give some, final thoughts, it would be think about what are you creating? How are you contributing to your world and the world around you?
Right. And don't forget to tell people where they can learn more about you and what you do, because that's an
Yes.
important part of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I'm the co-founder of Icon Maker joint venture and co-creator. We have 3 of us in our joint venture. And if you go to iconmakerlive.com, you'll find out more about the events that we have, as well as the workshops that we conduct regularly as well. So through these events, what we're doing is teaching coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs how to create a 7-figure sustainable business with podcasting, with high ticket offers, and really excited about the progress that we're seeing with our current clients and getting them to create these businesses that really help them in their lives and with their families to do what it is that lights them up as well.
Beautiful. And that goes right back to our notion of creation and remembering that in creation, there is no right or wrong. There is only creative expression, and you get to learn and grow and guide your hand in every brush stroke that you use to create your business, to create your life, to create your reality as you see fit. And so with that, I want to invite everybody here to make sure that you're commenting, joining the conversation, like, follow, share, subscribe, because there are more conversations just like this to be had. Sheryl, thanks for joining me on this show, and we will chat with everybody else very soon.